What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. And joining me today, Chris, Fedor, and Jimmy Watkins, cleveland.com's finest. And guys, while we were away from the podcast just for a few days, the Cleveland Cavaliers 2025-2026 schedule was announced. The NBA dropped all 30 team schedules when it comes to this coming season. And one notable is that the Cavs have 24 nationally televised games this year. Chris, I'm not completely sure what it was to start last year, but I think it was around 16, and now we're up to 24 this year. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it was right around there. And I think the thing that it shows, guys, is that obviously the Cavs are in the top tier of Eastern Conference teams based on what's remaining of these Eastern Conference teams. And we talked about this on a previous podcast. There are so many different questions about Boston. They don't have Jason Tatum. They got rid of Kristaps Porzingis. No more Drew Holiday. The belief of what Boston is going to be this year is very different than what it's been in the past. And even though it's a big market team, and even though it's got all that history and stuff like that, how do you invest in them if you're a national TV schedule maker? And then you talk about the Indiana Pacers. Yeah, they're the reigning Eastern Conference champions, but the way that they're currently constructed, that's not the team that went to the NBA Finals. They don't have Tyrese Halliburton. They got rid of Miles Turner. So there are legitimate questions about them. And if you're talking about trying to draw eyeballs and create a narrative and just pump up a team that you believe is going to be consistent, stable, great even, you're choosing between the Cleveland Cavaliers or you're choosing between the New York Knicks. And obviously at various points, you're going to pick the Knicks, and other points, you're going to pick the Cavs. And there are a lot of things to like about this Cavs team coming into this year, and I understand why schedule makers would buy into them. And it makes a lot of sense to me that they're top 10 in the NBA of all teams in national TV games. And it makes sense to me that when you're talking about holiday slates, which are big marquee games on the NBA schedule every single year, it makes sense that schedule makers would tab the Cavs of all the different Eastern Conference teams that they could choose from.
Still behind the Celtics, though.
Yeah, I mean, like, they still have that tradition, right? They still have who they are, and they still have, it's a big market team.
I actually do wonder if they'll stay that way, because there's a way that this Celtics season goes where Jaylen Brown has a tight hamstring in March.
Yeah.
And Derek White is feeling under the weather at certain moments that maybe he wouldn't otherwise feel under the weather. And then the NBA can flex some of these. There's also, Ethan and I talked about this earlier in the summer. I also think there's a version of events where, like, the Celtics are like, look, we still got a pretty decent core here, and the East isn't very good. Like, we could be a 5 seed. I still think that is within the realm of possibility to be a fascinating team. But yeah, it's good exposure for the Cavs. It's opportunity, again, an opportunity created by a power vacuum, but it's an opportunity to showcase what they've been doing here for the last couple of years and build the statuses of Evan Mobley's, Darius Garland's. As we've mentioned before, Donovan Mitchell is a very cool basketball player. I don't know that the Cavs can ever be a national brand without LeBron James,
Right.
but the NBA can do worse than doing a little bit of merit-based showcasing.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got going on here. I will say, coming to this list, the Cavs, of the teams on this list, besides, ironically, the Celtics, I would say they're the only team on this list that doesn't have like a super duper face of the league type star, right? Like Thunder, SGA, Warriors, Steph, Lakers, Luka, and LeBron. I guess we could have a conversation about the Knicks and Brunson. Maybe by virtue of being on the Knicks, Brunson belongs in that conversation. Anthony Edwards, The Houston Rockets have KD. Jokic is the best player walking. And then the Mavs have Cooper Flag, who are all the league wants to be next guy. That tells me I think this is about where you max out as the Cavs until you start winning big. Obviously, like I think the Cavs could be in a thundery position if they put together a season like that. But this is about as much exposure as I think the Cavs can get given their circumstances.
Or until Evan Mobley, if he becomes Wemby,
or starts speaking into microphones with his outdoor voice.
For the people at home who are unfamiliar with the quote-unquote list that Jimmy has been referencing, I sent out a text to our subtexters after the nationally televised schedule was released last week for subtexters to get ahead on the news of who had the most national televised games for this coming season. At the top of that list, it's the Thunder, the Warriors, the Lakers, and the Knicks with 34 games that will be nationally televised. Then you have the Timberwolves and the Rockets with 28, the Denver Nuggets with 26, the Boston Celtics with 25, the Cleveland Cavaliers with 24, and the Dallas Mavericks with 23. Also, I want to kind of get into the brain of the beat reporter on this for Chris. Obviously, we understand that coming with these nationally televised games is also the grueling season of back-to-backs, 14 sets for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they will play 5 straight road games over an 11-day stretch at one point throughout the season. Chris, as a reporter, when you look at this schedule, are there parts where you're like, oh, great, we're at home for a couple of days. Oh, great, this is a baseball schedule more than it's been ever. They got home and roads against the same team. They got home and homes and roads against the same team. And then there's also times where you're like, I'm on the road for forever. What goes through your mind when you get this schedule, especially as this has been anticipated for a majority of the summer?
Just from my perspective, there are a few things that I look at. I obviously look at how many West Coast trips are there. The fact that there's only one extended long West Coast trip for the Cavs this year, I think that's beneficial to them. I look at how manageable the schedule is from a travel aspect. Are you staying in cities for multiple days? Are you leaving the next day? How many holidays are there? How many times do we get to go to New York? Those are things that I look at because everybody knows how much I love New York. There are two things that stand out to me, too. 20 of the final 33 games that they play this season are on the road. And we've seen what tends to happen to a team like the Cavs that has big aspirations, thinking about a championship, thinking about the playoffs, as you get toward the very, very end of a grueling 82-game schedule. Just like, get me to the playoffs. Get me to the playoffs. So 20 of the final 33 on the road for this group going into the playoffs. There are going to be a lot of eggs that are being laid at the end of the season from this group. The other thing is the baseball series setup on the road is always so much fun. And that's one of the first things that I look for as a reporter, because you get to spend 4 or 5 days in one city as opposed to just 2-3 days in one city. Miami, big thumbs up. Thank you very much, schedule makers. Multiple days in Miami where I don't have to just hop on a plane. So you know that one of those is going to be a golf day for me. Sorry about it. If anybody in the Miami area that covers the Heat is into golfing with me, I'll be sending a bunch of texts to all of my contacts out there to see who wants to go get in 18 holes with me. That's great. The other back-to-back series setup is Philadelphia. It is the loudest, most obnoxious arena in the entire NBA. That's number one. And I don't know about the golf in Philly. I think it's going to be January when they do that with Philly, so that's not going to work for me. 4 or 5 straight days in Philly in January? It's not exactly Orlando in a back-to-back setup. It's not exactly Miami in a back-to-back setup. It's not exactly, I don't know, Los Angeles in a back-to-back setup. or Toronto even in a back-to-back setup would be glorious if they were to do that, knock out both of those road games with the Raptors. So a little give and take from my perspective when it comes to the schedule. Great. 2 thumbs up with the baseball series setup in Miami. I'm going to love my life that week. Philly, not so much.
I think that's fair. And I think there's a lot of different things that I saw on the list that are going to be extremely fun. Obviously, we talked about it on this podcast. The amount of holiday games is insane this year. They have so many things to look forward to whether it's MLK Day, Halloween, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, St. Patrick's Day, and even Easter, right? So I think one of the biggest things that I think we like to see when it comes to this team is when history is being made. So the Cavs are going to make history as the NBA's first ever Peacock exclusive broadcast when they square off against the Detroit Pistons on October 27th. And Jimmy, I know you are a big proponent in how these streaming platforms are changing the way that fans view the game. Not only necessarily at their homes, but in the arenas, and also just who is on the call for these broadcasts as well. I am intrigued to know your thought process when it comes to the growing avenues of streaming platforms and where this game is going.
What they say when your league is struggling to garner ratings, make the games harder to find. That's what they say. Here's the thing. I understand we're still kind of we're at the tail end of a streaming boom here. And particularly for sports leagues, we're still kind of in the meat of a streaming boom. A lot of money out there to be grabbed because TV execs, we can't call them TV execs because they're not TV execs. Streaming execs are realizing that pretty much the only reliable live property that you can have is live sports. Paramount Plus just paid $7 billion with a B dollars for UFC. My goodness. And at some point there is going to be a diminishing return on this. I think particularly for the NBA, because I know that people don't necessarily care about television ratings. I don't think fans should care about television ratings, by the way. Like, if you like the sport, that's kind of all that matters, right? But the league certainly should, because at some point this stuff is going to start mattering. And your new media rights deals will reflect the idea that you have had a substantial drop in ratings over the last decade. And, oh, by the way, your 2 eyeball torchbearers for that last decade, LeBron James and Stephen Curry, are phasing out of the league. This is why the face of the league conversation that all the players seem to not like, this is why it matters. This is why it matters to have a bankable star. Ideally, a few that that people will follow and watch on a given Wednesday night. The regular season, we've talked about this before, the NBA is a volume entity, but every sport is trying to be more like the NFL. Every sport wants to have big events that are can't miss and that draw a ton of eyeballs. And for the regular season, honestly, I think it's fine. Again, I don't think it's a good idea to make your games harder to find. But I think we know where this goes. We've seen this with the NFL. The NFL is starting to put playoff games on streaming services. I don't think we're far off of that with the NBA, and I would just caution Mr. Adam Silver about wading into those waters, because the thing about making your games pay-per-view, quote unquote, because this wouldn't be quite pay-per-view, but like if I have to buy Peacock or if I have to buy Paramount Plus, wherever, to find these games, you'll learn how popular you are real quick. And sometimes the answer isn't what you think it is.
Right. And you also, as you alluded to, Jimmy, you learn the popularity of your players. And I know that the NBA can't pick and choose when they're going to go into streaming and stuff like that, because it's just the way of the world and it's becoming the new norm. And this just so happens to be the era that we're in. But for the NBA, if you had your choice, this is not the right time to get into streaming. It's not, because it's toward the tail end of LeBron. It's toward the tail end of Steph. It's toward the tail end of KD. And you don't yet, not yet, you don't have that new established star. This is the person who is going to carry the flag, the person who's going to be must-see TV, the person who's going to make you want to tune in. You know, if you think about like a lot of these streaming services and you think about some of these other leagues, they're in a different place. They might be in a better place just from a general standpoint of getting people to buy those things or getting people to invest in that product in that kind of way. And I just don't know that the NBA is I don't know that they're in that space where it's like, okay, I am investing in the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Detroit Pistons. Like, why? If you're a casual NBA fan that's just not watching it on TNT because you can't watch it on TNT, or you're not watching it on ESPN because you can not watch that game on ESPN, like, why? Why in October would you do that? Like, who's the draw? What's the draw? There are a lot of teams around the NBA, guys, that have already said, hey, the regular season, not that it's meaningless, but it doesn't mean as much for us. So they've, in a way, kind of watered down their own regular season product with all this commentary, and it's all about championship. It's all about the playoffs. It's all about rings culture. So you're talking about regular season games in the NBA, especially early in the season, and you don't have like that guy. You don't have Mahomes, right? You don't have Burrow. You don't, if you're switching all these other sports, the NBA is looking for that kind of guy to drive the product in a different kind of way. And it doesn't have that. And it also has a relatively meaningless regular season compared to, let's say, the NFL. Because the NFL, there's only so many games, and every single game basically matters for playoff positioning and stuff like that. The NBA, it's an 82-game season. The regular season doesn't mean all that much, and you just don't have those guys who are carrying you into the next 5 to 10 years. Not yet, anyway. Maybe it's Ant. Maybe it becomes Wemby. Maybe it becomes Cooper Flag. But at this point, like, if you had your choice and everything was equal, this isn't the time to get into the streaming stuff, because you just don't have that person that you can build it around, or that team that you could build it around, to be honest with you. Like, you might try the Lakers. You might try this. Oh, you can't do the Celtics. Like the Knicks, okay. But it's a tough spot, I think, for the NBA right now.
And you just change the rules and make it harder to build dynasties, which is largely what has driven the history of your league. Here's an interesting thought for you. I read about this morning a little bit. There's a Browns element to it. It doesn't matter. Basically, the idea is that it's harder to tank in the NFL because people are watching every game, every snap, no matter what, because the NFL is an event-based sport. And I was doing a little research. We talk about how coaches often complain about how impatient teams are with team building and guys get fired left and right. Generally, that's true. 9 of the 10 worst teams in the league last year didn't fire their coach. The Suns were the only one. Now, that was fascinating. And I do think it's partially because when you're supposed to be bad, when you're supposed to be good and then you're bad, patience goes out the window.
Right.
But if you plan to be bad in the NBA, which you can do, in the NFL, it's harder to do because it's kind of like what we doing on Sundays, guys. Like, you got to give us something. You have a little grace. Yeah, because like, by the end of last year, Charlotte Hornets fans are tuned out. Washington Wizards fans are tuned out. Like, they'll find something else to watch on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, which is, I guess good for, I don't know, Brian Keefe. But is that good for Adam Silver? I would argue no. I think you want that level of investment from your fans. Like, the idea that I'm just taking the season off. Like, I'll watch a few fun fourth quarters when I get a league pass alert, or if our lottery picks got 25. Like, no.
Yeah.
There's got to be more than that to it.
Do you guys think it's harder, especially because all of the star players, all of these next potential faces of the league are in the Western Conference? Like, I think of the Eastern Conference, and the name that comes to mind is Jason Tatum, who we're not likely to see for a year, right? So there's this difficulty as well where we're talking about, are fans staying up till 10 o'clock at night to watch the Golden State Warriors?
11 o'clock now. So is 11 o'clock.
Yeah. So it's so much more difficult because the Eastern Conference is struggling to keep up when it comes to developing these stars. And there are so many of them in the Western Conference. Chris, you mentioned Cooper Flag, but obviously Shea, Nikola. You got all of these different players that are just to a different standard when it comes to stardom already, that are majority in the Western Conference. And I think that makes it harder for Adam Silver to try and promote these Eastern Conference games, because who are you coming to watch? Like, sure, Jaylen Brown obviously is great, but does he push the needle the same way that Jason Tatum did, or does?
No.
Does Donovan Mitchell push the needle the same way that some of these other players do? I would argue
the
that.
answer to that.
Yeah, I would argue that as well. Jalen Brunson, right? How close are you getting? Again, other than Jason Tatum, outside of New York. Right. But the other thing about that is these are smaller guards, again, outside of Jason Tatum. Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, smaller guards. They can only do so much to bring energy to each game. They can only do so much to uplift their team in each matchup.
I don't just think it's the Western Conference thing. I think that is a good point, and I think it's something that we have to talk about. I think the other thing is that many of the best players in today's NBA are international, and that's good and bad. I think I've said for a number of years that the next face of the NBA, to me, has to be an American-born player to have the kind of impact that LeBron has had. And look, I don't think anybody's going to have that kind of impact. But to get to that status, you know what I mean? I think it's got to be an American-born player to get to the status that Steph had, to get to the status that KD had, to get close enough to LeBron to carry that flag for the NBA. I think it has to be an American-born player. And it's tough because many of the best players in today's NBA are international. And usually when you talk about the next face of the NBA, you are talking about the best player or a top 5 player. And then all of a sudden they have that other stuff that goes with it. The entertainment value, the style that they play, how relatable are they, all those different things. Do they have a nickname? Do they have a signature shoe? Do they have a signature celebration? And all those different things that encompass what entertainment is. But when is the last time that we were consistently in a stretch of NBA basketball where the best player, or, you know, the second best player, or the third best player was international? We're stepping into new territory, I think, for the NBA, because if you think back, go all the way back, you know, you had Magic, you had Bird, you had Jordan, you had Isaiah, you had Kobe, you had LeBron, you had Steph. This is different because when you think about today's NBA, you think Giannis, you think Jokic, you used to think Embiid. We'll see what he does when he comes back from these knee problems. You think Shea, MVP, Luka. Hello? Like, the list goes on and on and on. And it might have to be Ant. Like, it might have to be Ant. It might have to be Cooper Flag. You know what I mean? Because, like, you need somebody that is in that same tier. Jason Tatum might have to be him because he's already gotten himself as a basketball player to that point where he's in MVP conversations, where he is leading his team to championships. But beyond Tatum and Ant, we're talking about all this just great pool of international players. And that helps with the reach internationally. And that's kind of part of Adam Silver's vision. And it was part of the vision for the late David Stern. But did those guys resonate with Americans the same kind of way? Are Americans going to go out and buy Shai Gilgeous-Alexander signature shoes? Like, are they going to buy Wemby signature shoes? I don't know. I think it's just a different place that the NBA is stepping into, and I'm not entirely sure they know what's going to come of it and how it's going to work for them.
Yeah, this is really an interesting conversation. It starts here. David Stern's plan worked.
Yes, it did.
Sending the dream team overseas, internationalizing the brand of the NBA, unquestionably smashing success. Trouble with that is your base audience is still all mostly American. That's where your money's coming from. And on a very basic level, Olympics come around, we're all rooting for America. Right?
Yeah.
And that's now the NBA is, it's not the Olympics, but we're looking for that's the other thing about this face of the league conversation. We're not just looking for the next face of the league. We're looking for the next American face of the league. And it's a fascinating thing to chew on. Like, why isn't Luka Doncic resonating? Although we'll see with the Lakers. That'll be a fascinating experiment. Putting Luka on the Lakers will be a fascinating experiment to see if we can catch on the way other great stars have. Shai, Jokic, Giannis. I think one of the things is that it's a key difference between American culture and European culture is that we are obsessed with celebrity in a way that is just not the same overseas. And I think you can see it in the way that European players comport themselves, right? Like Anthony Edwards in front of a microphone, like that guy is worth the price of admission. He is hilarious, charismatic, liable to say something wild.
Spontaneous.
Yeah. He grew up watching athletes, actors, musicians, whatever, behaving with this sort of it's kind of a uniquely American swagger, right? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, dude goes to bed at like 8 o'clock, I feel like. You know? Giannis is a family man who works really hard, but Giannis, like one of the torchbearers of Mamba mentality, and Giannis is funny and charming, I think, and I think honest. But it doesn't seem like he wants that spotlight off the court the way some American players do or get, and that happens to them in the past. Jokic, we know the villain Jokic. It just seems like he cares more about his horses than he does with like basketball at times. Obviously, that's not true. He works on it every single day. He's the best player in the world. Right. But like, he's got how many of our best players in the league have other hobbies that they are almost as interested in? Like that's interesting. And
it took LeBron 40 years to pick up or something like that.
It takes
a different side. Yeah,
I think it'll take a while to reckon with. Kind of like we did not see the effects of the Dream Team right away. I think we will probably not see the effects of its success right away. So there's also a cultural shift. Like our country is changing. We are not as. I think we are losing, like, for a variety of reasons. Like pandemic came around, everyone stays inside more. Everyone's more to themselves. We're probably going to start relating to 8 o'clock bedgoer Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as the generations go on, but it's going to take some time.
I think, Jimmy, you make a great point, and just to add on to that, I mean, Victor Wembanyama has admitted that, like, he turns his phone off and he has to read some of his book before going to bed every night. That's his routine, right? And the other thing that you kind of alluded to.
Oh, that's good sleep hygiene, kids. Be like Victor.
When I think of how the game translated to the international game, I think of when Kobe Bryant would travel for showcases and the entire country that he was going to would feel like it would be in the street when his bus pulled up and he would get mobbed. Michael Jordan, the same way. James Harden, when he goes to China, He was mobbed by fans. And it's not because they were international players to them. It was because they had built up a brand, something that wanted to be latched onto, right? And obviously, sure, whenever Nikola goes back to Serbia, like they get so much love, but it's not necessarily basketball love. It's you're putting on for this country love. And I think when it comes to NBA players, it's more so they have this stature to them that allows them to walk into different rooms and make it feel like other countries haven't gotten to experience them. And then you build that rapport with them while you're in that country. And every time you come back, it grows. But the one person that I think of all the time that I think is probably the most historically mobbed when it comes to going overseas is Michael Jackson. Like you hear the stories of how Michael would just go and everywhere he followed, he could not go outside of his hotel room because of how many people were there. Like it's so insane to think about how people have seen what impact they've made, not only in their home state, but in other countries as well. But I do want to say this before we get out of here and ask you guys. We keep having this debate between international players and you American born players. The one thing that we haven't heard about yet is the All-Star game and its setup and its format and what Adam Silver is going to decide to do to grow that game and impact that game in a different way that it hasn't been relevant in it seems a few years now. And we've had this conversation a few times on this podcast, but Team World versus Team USA seems like the logical answer to not only showcasing what the American born players can do in a scenario where they're playing against Team World outside of the Olympics, but also putting on the stage to try and figure out, oh, how competitive are you guys going to get if you're putting on the USA on your chest? Because as we know, as we've seen from documentaries now over the past year, those guys care when they're branded with the country's symbol. And maybe that even pushes it a little bit more for players wanting to get all-star nominations. Obviously, they want to be all-stars in their own right, but being able to call yourself a part of Team USA outside of FIBA, outside of the Olympics, it might push the meter just a little bit. What do you guys think?
Maybe, but guys, there are levels to this. At the end of the day, it's still an exhibition. At the end of the day, it's still going to be an all-star game. It's not going to be viewed like a regular season game. It's not going to be viewed like the FIBA World Cup. It's not going to be viewed by these guys like the Olympics or something like that. It's going to be viewed as an all-star game, and they're going to treat it as such. So yeah, maybe if you do international against the United States, maybe the competitive level ratchets up a little bit. Maybe they care a little bit more than they do right now. But I think there just has to be, as hard as this is, I think there just has to be a level of acceptance from the league on what this is and what it's always going to be. It's never going to be a hard-fought, intense, competitive game for 48 minutes. It's just never going to be seen as that, and it's never going to be treated like that because these guys want it to be part of their break away from the grind of an 82-game schedule, and they want to put on a show, and they want to do fun, easygoing things, and they don't want to hurt themselves in an exhibition environment that's going to affect whether they can get a playoff spot on their team, whether they can compete for a championship, because that's what the culture that has been created in the NBA is about. How many rings do you have? How many championships do you have? It's not how do you look in an all-star game. It's not are you an all-star MVP. So the all-star game is what it is. And yes, I do think Team USA versus the world would be more fun. And I think it would be more interesting. And I think there would be more of a level of care. But you're just not going to turn the all-star game into what so many people have spent the last couple of years talking about it, maybe possibly becoming. Because you're not going to have enough guys all in unison, all caring to the same level that you would need them to care to get it to that point. It's just not going to happen.
So first of all, I'm even I'm skeptical that the All-Star game could even be the tool that we're talking about. Like the All-Star game as like a kingmaker or like a like legitimate event. Like even when back in the glory days of the All-Star game, by the way, no, for forever, people haven't been trying in the All-Star game. It didn't just start happening 10 years ago. Maybe we've had a few more pronounced, like in recent years, we've had a few more pronounced versions of that. But it was not like, what's your favorite All-Star game memory? I can vaguely remember one of MJ's last game, maybe his last game that like went into overtime or something. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, which kind of tells you exactly what you need to know about my favorite All-Star game memories. They don't exist. But let's accept that premise for a second. Let's accept that if everyone played really hard in the All-Star game, it would be this must-see event on a Sunday night in February, which is like television geography-wise. It's a location, that's a time, it's a good spot. People are like, dang, we don't have football. We'd like to have a cool sports thing to watch. Okay, let's accept the premise. It could make a difference. You know who really doesn't care about the All-Star game? The European players. Nikola Jokic every year is one of the worst defenders. He just doesn't care. And we can try to tap into some national pride and go USA versus the world, but there is a very big difference between wearing Serbia on your chest and wearing world on your chest. Like, what is that? That I don't know that. Like, I know that like Luka and Jokic are friends, but are Shea and Jokic gonna go, okay, we gotta go do it for our different countries that really don't have a ton to do with each other? Like, we're focused a lot on the American players need a reason to come together. What's the quote worlds? Right. We're gonna invade America. Like what's going on here?
Are you really representing your country?
Exactly. What we kind of need for that format to work, we need America to lose in the Olympics a couple times. We need the American players to get pissed off. We need a little trash talk between whoever it is at France or Serbia or whoever that beats us. Again, maybe more than once. And you know what that means? That means we need a lot of time because the Olympics come once every 4 years if we're going to try this particular format. And I think this particular format might be your best shot, but you need time. And here's the other thing about the All-Star game. Again, we're accepting this premise that I don't believe that the All-Star game could be this big thing. I don't know that Adam Silver's patient enough to make this work. This dude changes the rules every other year. I feel like we're going to be playing slam ball next year with a 5-point line. And you know what? Let's just play 2K instead. Like, we'll just stream it. We'll stream it on YouTube with some famous Twitch. Like, can we catch our breath? It might help the All-Star game if people knew what the All-Star game was doing every year. Elam Ending had a fun year, right? Like the first time we did the Elam Ending, I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting. Like when there's a target score, we do at least get that little fourth quarter juice of like, guys don't want to lose and they know that they could be losing soon. So you could see a little bit of uptick in competition. And then after maybe they did it twice. So it was just like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. And it's like, well, why? It kind of worked, and maybe it could have really worked if you gave it a chance to catch on. But I don't know. I just feel like the NBA is run like a social media algorithm where it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Oh, sorry, my screen changed. We got to try something else now. And it's like, no, that's not how you build sustainability. That's not how you capture an audience long term. There's a reason why the NBA is so good on social media and struggling via your traditional viewing avenues. Like that's how it operates.
And so the other thing is, if you talk about world against Team USA for an international flavor to it in the All-Star game and that kind of environment, like are you talking about 12 on each side? Probably, right? You have to have 12 worthy enough from each side. You know what I mean? And then you start looking at those rosters and you start saying to yourself, and like maybe it just like works out that way. But there could be a situation that you run into where you start looking at those rosters and you say, well, is guy number 12 for the American side taking somebody that probably is a little bit more worthy of the all-star consideration? Because for all of the things that you can talk about with the game, being an all-star still matters in the status conversation. It probably doesn't matter as much as MVP, and it certainly doesn't matter as much as how many championships do you have. But one of the things that we say all the time is X-time all-star Kobe Bryant, X-time all-star Donovan Mitchell, 2-time all-star Darius Garland, right? Like there still is a status attached to that. And maybe there might be incentives in a contract for some of these guys attached to that as well. And then you start really like looking at these rosters and saying, well, Trae Young didn't get in because guy number 12 on the international, because they needed 12 from the international side. Or you could say, well, Andrew Wiggins didn't get in because they needed 12 from the American side. And I think you're going to have those kinds of conversations as well. So you have to make sure that you have 12 worthy recipients of an all-star nod internationally, and you have 12 worthy recipients from an American standpoint. And I don't know if it's ever going to work out exactly the way that they would want it to, where you say, okay, the 24 most worthy all-stars are generally speaking right in that neighborhood. The 24 most worthy all-stars are exactly 12 international and exactly 12 American.
You're creating a bigger problem by trying to solve a problem that I don't think you can solve, right? You're hurting legacies to try to, or complicating legacies by trying to make the All-Star game this marquee event. At that point, I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze.
That's a fair point on both ends. And the only thing that I'm going to say is, I think
Paulo Banchero part of Team World, or is he part of Team USA in an all-star environment? Is Karl Anthony Towns part of Team World, or is he part
Joel
of
Embiid?
Joel Embiid?
Well, is Joel Embiid walking first? But if
It's the
assuming he's
Olympic
walking,
conversation all over again with Joel Embiid.
I just think, like, for the game to matter, the players have to care, right? And obviously, Jimmy mentioned, like, the players haven't cared for a while. I think the last time I remember somebody caring is Kobe Bryant, because he was just like, I don't care, that's an all-star game, I'm going to give you a bucket. The only player that I know of that is trying to give 100% at an all-star game is Victor Wembanyama, who went on the record last year after the all-star game saying that he believes you can play 100% in every single game that you play. And that's just how he's wired.
Well, Kyrie spent a couple of years really, really trying. And he kind of gathered other NBA players and saying, hey, who wants to get on board with me and try and make this thing more competitive? So I do give Kyrie credit because he was open and outspoken about it. And then he also like put in the effort as well. But nobody's going to do it for the entire game. It's just not going to happen.
You need somebody to be the voice of, hey, I want to actually compete, or just going out there and dominating to the point where it's embarrassing. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to get put on a poster by Wemby every time down the floor. So let's actually start trying, or anything of that nature. Again, not likely to happen. I don't think it's going to. I just thought it was interesting that there is at least one player that could be a perennial all-star that wants to play the game at a high level, even though not everybody else around him is going to. But I think this was a very insightful conversation, not only about the Cleveland Cavaliers schedule, but about the future of the All-Star game and where the game is going for streaming platforms and all those different things. If you wanted to argue with us a little bit about what we had to say on today's podcast, subtext is the way to go. So with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. This is where you can also send in your weekly Hey Chris questions for every single week when we go into the questions from our subtexters, answering them one by one and getting into everything that they have to offer. To do so, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.